Welcome to Therapy is Dope with Alicia.
And Julie, let's make self help fun again. No, seriously, laughter is the best medicine.
Come and join us as we introduce new ways of thinking and being.
And hopefully get you laughing along the way.
Experts here today. Oh, wait, that's just us.
That's actually just Alicia. I'm a good observer, listener, and ask really good questions, I feel, or try to ask good questions. But if it wasn't for Alicia, I think it would just be a podcast full of questions.
That is not true. You have a lot of input and experience. Today's topic, speaking of input and experience, I guess we're calling it chemical dependency. The way the DSM would describe it is substance use. And there's a lot of different directions you can go with that.
Yeah.
So, but that's where the beginning of my career started. So got plenty of experience in that arena.
What were you most surprised about when you started in that field?
I think society has a perception of people who overuse substances as being weak. And I realized working closely with them that they are not weak people at all. They're people who have been through all kinds of stuff and are capable of even better in their lives. And it takes a major shift. And I understand why in the world of AA, they call it a spiritual awakening. But when an addict decides to do something different, they're like unstoppable. They like pull themselves out of the biggest hole you've ever seen, and they do better than the average person. And that's like with felonies on their record.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're saying that addicts are stronger than normal people.
I mean, they're very determined people, and this is speaking very generally, obviously, but when they decide, they're like the go big or go home people, so when they decide to do something, they jump in all the way, and they're like they're committed.
Do you think everybody kind of has a mini addict in them, like a mini level of addiction? Because some people see it as, define it as passion, right? They go, oh no, I'm just really passionate about my hobby. And you could have, addiction to kombucha, or if it's not even a chemical, like even a hobby. I love soccer and I play soccer every single day and whatnot. But because the results of soccer is so healthy, people see it as passionate. Versus if someone says, I'm really passionate about cocaine. I love cocaine. It makes me feel so good. I work a lot better. I'm in a much better mood. My relationships are better. I just have to go to the bathroom every 20 minutes to get high.
Yeah, I don't
but
know.
my health is downhill.
That's really how that goes.
Yeah. And my health is just downhill. But is it because one results in a life destroying result? And if soccer was, let's say if the person played soccer and ended up quitting their job, end up missing their job because they wanted to play soccer, and they would call in sick all the time, or they would be late because they just wanted to play longer, right? And it starts actually messing up their relationship. And let's say they're married at home with kids, but instead of being there, he just wants to play soccer. So he would leave, or when he's with them, he's not present because he's thinking about soccer moves or like things that he missed, or like a goal he missed or a goal he made, whatever it was.
And when you say soccer, are you referring to Tom Brady and Code? Because I feel like
that is so funny that you said that. I didn't even think about that. I wonder if he's that obsessed with football. Was it unhealthy for that? But him being the GOAT and him getting all this publicity and people, literally cherish the ground he walks on, right? And I've actually seen a video where he like passes, he passes the ball somewhere or whatever, and he ends up walking out and wiping his hands on a towel and tossing on the floor. And someone looks around, grabs a towel and puts it in his jacket. And he's a god, right? So he might be addicted to the attention, the whatever it is, but the love of the game is there. So at what point would you say that addiction to the game or the love of the game becomes addiction? Or do we still see it as love of the game, passionate, caring, dedicated, loving, right? And what point do we say if it was a drug that it was unhealthy from the get-go?
Well, I'm gonna answer your questions in order. The first one you said was would you say something like that everybody has something, kind of?
Yeah.
And there's actually a statistic that like 1/3 of the population will never be addicted to anything. It's just not part of their personality. They can have a cigarette and then not smoke for 3, 6, 9 a year. So, and then there's other people that if they smoke a cigarette, that's it. They're off to the races. They're going to be buying packs and going for it. And so 1/3 of the population is no. Another third of the population is moderate, like they can kind of ride the line of having a problem, so they could be excessive users. And then the other third of the population is severe addicts, and severe addicts are usually the ones that everybody shames and looks down on. However, if those people rechannel their energies and get sober, they really are incredible. And it doesn't mean anything about their heart either. They all, I mean, from my experience, they can have some of the most beautiful hearts, especially when they're sober. I mean, when you're under the influence, everything's clouded. So they're different people when they're under the influence. But anyway, getting to your other question, at what point does something or anything become an addiction? And the answer to that question is when it starts to cause problems in your life. So this is where things get tricky, because let's say, I think we talked about this a little bit last time, that if you're watching porn and your partner has an issue with it, do you have a problem with it, or does your partner have a problem with it? And
oh, yes.
And so it does get tricky and it gets hairy and it's hard to figure out, like, and initially every addict thinks it's everybody else that's the problem. You just don't understand me. You just don't know how to have fun, whatever the case may be. So initially it always looks like the other people are the problem or whatever. And then slowly but surely it starts to compile and it starts to look like, oh, I keep having problems, like I keep getting arrested, or I keep losing relationships, or I keep losing jobs. And that's where you have to look at, okay, this is starting to look like a problem. But I'm glad that you brought up athleticism and sort of working out and things like that, because all of those things can be addicting. And that culture of being a professional athlete is very high pressure, and it can be very addicting for sure, because not just the game, but everything that goes into it, the practice, the exercise, the diet, all of those things can be obsessions essentially that become unhealthy for a person.
But couldn't you argue, since we talked about Tom Brady, couldn't you argue that he would not be the GOAT if he wasn't obsessed? He wouldn't have all the accolades that he has and achievements if he wasn't obsessed. Let's say if he says, no, I wanted moderation. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna try as hard. I'm not gonna watch all those videos. I'm gonna have a cheat day when it comes to my meals. And he doesn't have the treatment he has or the achievements that he had if he wasn't obsessed.
Yes, I mean, look, our strengths can also be our weaknesses, always. That's always the case with humans. Whatever your strength is can also be your weakness. Let's just say on a small scale that you are very crazy about time, and you're always trying to be on time, and you care about getting things done in a timely fashion. But on the other hand, you might annoy all the people in your life because you're always like, oh, time,
Yeah,
time, time. So
you definitely annoy me because I'm late all the time.
your strengths can be your weaknesses. And I don't actually know enough about Tom Brady's life to say that he was obsessed and that was his demise. I mean, that is what it sounds like that from what I've heard, but I haven't looked into it enough to say that that was the problem. But I can say I've worked with some professional athletes, and it can become an obsession, and it can be hard to even stop all of those things once you stop playing. Some people
Oh,
are really good at it. Some people are like, ugh, I'm so done with that, and they're just like, I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm not going to be exercising like that. And then
right.
other people have a really hard time coming out of that mind space.
Yeah, I actually knew a professional athlete. He was an NFL player, and he went from being a god when he's on the lawn or on the with a field lawn. Tells you
Same.
about my sports fan level. Okay, but I remember him fighting, struggling to fight an identity issue
Oh,
because
yeah.
the less and less he was on the field, the less and less he was recognized or was given these freebies or access or power.
Yeah.
And I think he struggled with that a lot. And I don't know if Tom Brady or other athletes do that too. So they want to be included somehow. Or on the flip side of that, do they go and say, yeah, those people that say have want nothing to do with it because maybe they didn't enjoy it and their time was up? Um, I don't know.
I know Justin Bieber talks about that. I mean, obviously he's not an athlete, but he talks about the stark difference between being on stage and having all these fans around you to then going on the bus by yourself and being like kind of lonely on the road. And he said the highs and lows like mess with your mind. And I could see that for sure.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That you're on a bus and literally you're, again, I'm gonna use the word God, but like, you're God when it comes to you're on the stage. Every people are paying money to see you. It's how in like if you think about how crazy is that feeling, right? To be like, I'm worth this dollar sign. I'm worth millions of dollars. And when you're surrounded by yes men because you're paying their salary. They have a job because you're performing. And so you're the most important person in the room all the time. But on top of that, like you don't have anything else. You're going to God to sleep so you could be God the next day, sleep, God, sleep. You mean there isn't any decompression time.
Yeah, my cousin, he travels with some musicians. He's traveled with a couple of different bands. He does lighting, and he doesn't even know what city he's in half the time. Like I'll be like, "Oh, I see you guys are coming to Tampa." And he's like, "Are we?"
Gee, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, he's like, "I just get on the bus and go where I'm supposed to go." So, I mean, and I'm sure they, if from my perspective, it's like, oh my God, you've seen so much of the world, you've gone so many places, and I don't even know how much they actually get to see of any of those places because they're just working.
Mm.
So, anyway, yes, all of these, anything, what makes something addicting is the potency. So, in the world of drugs, obviously, heroin and crack cocaine are of the most potent, so they're the most addictive, right? But it's all about whatever appeals to a person. Everybody's individualistic, and different things appeal to different people. So you might prefer a sweet potato, and I prefer a piece of chocolate. I think that
Yeah.
might be accurate for me and Julie.
Yeah, actually, that makes sense. I do love chocolate. No, actually, no, that's wrong when it comes to chocolate.
Okay.
Everything.
Okay.
Chocolate is better than everything. But if you said kale, I would be like, girlfriend, girlfriend, not kale.
So it's kind of like whatever hits you just right, you know, and that could be working out, it could be, you know, eating a certain something, it could be whatever, you know, like people who eat fast food all the time obviously really enjoy it. I don't really like fast food.
Yeah,
So
me.
that's like a benefit that I have. It doesn't taste that good to me. But obviously, plenty of other people think it does. And it's the same thing for drugs. Like some people are like, oh, alcohol makes me tired or alcohol makes me depressed. And other people are like, what? I have a drink and I'm ready to party. So it's all about how something hits for you. Some people like high intensity workouts. That is not me. I'm not that person.
Yeah.
It does not appeal to me in the slightest. So what's going to give people the dopamine hit is different. And some people get it from shopping and some people get it from cigarettes.
Yeah. So actually, while you're speaking, I was looking up the definition of addiction. And there's one definition that annoys me right now because it says the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. I hate when they use the word that I'm trying to look up in the definition. It's like, that's
Super
what I was
annoying.
trying to look up, person. Okay, now I have a different one. It says, what is defined as an addiction? Addiction is defined as a chronic, relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use seeking and use despite adverse consequences. But that
Yeah,
says specifically addiction to a substance. Couldn't you say activity as well? So if I replace,
absolutely.
okay, compulsive activity seeking or drug seeking or substance seeking and use despite adverse consequences.
I mean, think about like we've been talking about athletes, and think about the concussion. Did you see the concussion movie that came out?
No, I need
Uh,
to.
Basically, like concussions are very dangerous to experience, and obviously a lot of people experience them and they're fine. But when you're playing football, for example, you are much more likely to get a concussion. And a lot of football players end up with some serious brain damage as a result, and yet they don't stop playing.
Well, maybe they also see it as you can't say that with addiction. I don't know if you could say addiction. You could say it as a lot of people are depend on that as their way out of life or as their one succession plan or their one not succession plan, their success plan. So it's their only way to get to make money, make a lot of money, right? So they understand what the risks are, but I think also they're like, it's not going to happen to me, right?
I'm not saying somebody who plays football is an addict. I'm saying if you're starting to experience physical consequences from the game
Oh,
and you're like, I don't care, I'm going to keep playing,
oh,
there might be something else going on here for you
right.
beyond just the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then another thing says, what are criteria for addiction? These criteria fall under four basic categories. Number one, impaired control. Number two, physical dependence. Number three, social problems. And number four, risky use.
Physical dependence you have to be careful with because people are like, oh, you can't physically get addicted to marijuana. Well, first of all, yes, you can. The physical dependence just looks differently.
Mm,
And the same with alcohol. So you can be physically addicted to alcohol. And a lot of people think you're not an alcoholic unless you're physically addicted. But there are plenty of people out here who are addicts who aren't showing the physical withdrawal symptoms all the time. So uh you have to be careful with the physical piece. I mean, technically any hangover is withdrawal. So
oh,
what are we calling physical dependence? I think that's a hiccup that people, it's something they use to say I'm not an addict. Another thing people say is, oh, I don't use by myself, or I only use during the day, or I never use during the day. I only use at night. So there's a lot of different excuses that I don't do it every day. That's another one. I don't do it
Oh.
every day. So none of those things are necessarily relevant unless you're talking about someone who's thinking that they have to have a physical withdrawal.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
So you can have problems in your life from using a substance or having an addiction of anything without physical dependence.
Okay. So now that we've defined what it is, or tried to define what it was, and used things that aren't obviously an addiction, right? Like a hobby or something that became an addiction, not necessarily the obvious, which would be drugs. And I liked how you defined broke down the population into no's, riding the line, maybes, and yes.
Yeah.
I think I'm a no, because I've done like I've tried hardcore drugs once, and then I've never had to think about it. And I do have to say, I did Molly one time, and I had literally the best day of my entire life. It was heaven. If heaven was on earth, that was the day I did Molly. Like everything that ever happened in my life, I felt like all came together in that night. And it was like 8 hours of complete bliss. And
And
I
you
love
never
it.
did it again?
Oh, and then I didn't do it for like 5 years or whatever, because I just didn't. I just chalked it up to, oh, I was in a really good place. I was with my family and friends. We were in a really fun day. Everything was just perfect, right? So basically, I was at Coachella, and I just went with a person I really fully trust, and we were dating, and I had all my friends, I had my family there. Then at the end, I came home and I had dinner with my parents, and it was just like everything that I could have loved was in there. And before that day, I already worked a lot, and I got really like helped everybody here at my work, and I felt like everything was great.
Do you
It
hear
was like
yourself talking right now? This is the perfect day ever in Julie's mind. First of all, having dinner on Molly with your parents, that's hilarious. And second, the day before you got to help everybody, that's a good day.
Isn't that so funny? It was like
you are hilarious.
I don't know why, but that was like my favorite day ever. And
this just gives us insight into who you are.
Well, I mean, like everything was complete, right? And I just felt, and everyone was so loving, and it was just great. And
I mean, it's adorable. So
and
wholesome.
then I didn't do Molly for like years.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I think I'm in the medium group. I definitely feel like I've ridden the line. I think that's
how would you describe that? What do you mean? What did you feel? How were you feeling?
Well, for example, during COVID, I started drinking daily, and that's when my stomach started to get messed up. And that's when I realized, this is causing a problem in my life.
Oh.
This is starting to fit the narrative. And that's when I stopped drinking. So I think that, and I have my family, there are people in my family that definitely also ride the line. I think my grandfather did. I think some of my cousins have. I think some of my cousins have crossed the line as well into severe addiction. And that's the thing, like when you're in the moderate category, you can't say like, oh, I've had control in different times in my life, so I'm not at risk for crossing the line into the severe category, because people can cross over at any time. I've seen people do it in their 40s, in their late 30s. So if you're riding that line, it's still risky and you still have to be careful.
So if you're so basically 2/3 of the population should be careful.
Yes. Absolutely.
So only 1/3 of the population would probably be, I feel like I would be a no. I don't know that.
I think you're a no too, yeah.
Yeah. And I think if I I don't know. I guess if I was presented to something that was like great, I don't know if I would do it. Like, let's say if I loved traveling, I can't do it all the time. Afterwards, like just, I don't know what I would be addicted to, if it was activity or if it was a drug or
Oh,
if
just it's not you. You're in the
Yeah, yeah.
nose. It's
I guess I
okay.
wouldn't know. So, what would you say to people that are in that 2/3 and be like, hey, you got to be careful? What are signs that you could say before it becomes too bad? Because you don't want to get to, it's just like also maintaining weight, right? I always think this too. I go, and they go, oh, it's okay, like you could spare a few pounds, but then you don't want to get to a place where, because it's easier to maintain something. Like, let's say every day I have, if I do my laundry, I just put it away right away. Or I spend 5 minutes to clean the bathroom every day versus having it accumulate and then spending 3 hours cleaning once a month or something. I don't do that. I just rather do a little bit every day type of thing. And it's easier to maintain, just like your weight too. Like I'd rather not be 50 pounds overweight and being like, oh, I need to now try to get back to that thing, because then you have to deal with saggy skin and you need to deal with a lot more stuff versus maintaining my weight now and not going for that 10th chocolate, which I often do, whatever, fuck it. But you know what I mean? So I feel like when it comes to maintaining your addiction, what are signs that you go, hey, maybe I should step back a little bit before it's even like dangerous at all?
So usually people will start telling you that, that you might be overdoing it, or that you are starting to be too much, or that you're starting to scare them or something like that. Like, people will say things to you, and usually that's the easiest thing to blow off. People blow that off pretty easily. And then problems, you'll have other problems in your life, like people won't want to hang out with you anymore, or relationships will start to end. Like, you can't hold a romantic relationship either, or financial problems, like I'm spending all of my money on this thing. It could be buying purses or it could be buying booze. But when you're trying to get dopamine hits all the time, it usually costs us money at some point. So people can get themselves into financial problems. Work is another thing. Like, if you start showing up to work late, or you start performing poorly, or you start getting written up, or you keep losing your job, those are signs that there could be a problem, that there is a problem going on. So you basically look at the areas that of functionality, your health, your relationships, your work, and your finances. Those are the biggest categories usually.
Okay. So, okay. Because when the first comments that you said, if you go, hey, you shouldn't be doing that so much. So let's say it was that like drinking or something. It's like, hey, you've been drinking a lot, this week. I understand how the person could be that is drinking a lot could be just annoyed, because they're like, this person, because am I really drinking that much? Or according to you, you don't want me to drink because you want me to do something else. Yes. Right? Versus is it the other person projecting a problem towards me, versus is this really a problem? Right. Going back to everything in moderation, right? Moderation is subjective, because to Alicia, moderation with the coffee was, up until, oh, my stomach hurts, maybe I need to stop. Yeah. But if your stomach didn't hurt, you probably wouldn't have thought that was an issue.
Right. Correct.
But yeah, versus I don't drink coffee at all. So if I drank coffee once a week, if I started drinking coffee once a week, I would feel like that's a lot. Oh, why do I have, this is my second cup of coffee this week.
It's so funny that you keep talking about coffee too, because in the world of AA, when people stop drinking alcohol, they often start drinking coffee. And there's coffee at every AA meeting, and some of the old timers drink coffee all day. They have like a little, like Stanley cup or whatever, and they just drink that all day long. So it's almost like the coffee replaces the alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I remember reading this randomly, but a lot of times people say if you want to quit cigarettes, pick up other habits, because sometimes you're used to having cigarettes in your hand. So they said put like a carrot stick or stuff like that. So then you eat help. Number one, you're changing your diet eating, but also you have something in your hand that feels it's a weight of the cigarette. It feels like it's something you can play around with, and stuff like that. So I wonder if that is, it's the better of two evils. Not like coffee's an evil, but I'm just,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We call it in the substance abuse world, we call it harm reduction.
Oh.
And a lot of times marijuana is harm reduction for people. If you've been doing meth and now you smoke weed, I mean, you're probably most likely much more functional on weed than you were on meth. So
yeah,
I'm not going to argue with you about it. But then for other people, weed is their problem. So it's depends. Everything in life depends.
That's frustrating, because I'm sure that some people even listening to podcasts is like, no, I want answers. I want you to give me a template of exactly what I'm doing. I want to go, Alicia, give me step 1, recognizing the addiction is this. Step 2, this is what I do, whatever, harm reduction. Number 3, blah, 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 blah. And then number 4, freedom, you know what I mean? And happiness. The crazy thing is, it's never that way, right? Just like there's millions of movies telling the same story out there, millions of songs that give you the same message, and millions of motivational speakers that give you the same message. And why are they all successful? Because it depends on the person. Because I might love Oprah, but you might be like, nah.
Oh no,
who's
I
better?
love Oprah. No, I was just kidding.
Who doesn't love Oprah? First of all, okay. So how dare I?
Oprah for
how
president.
Dare I say that? I know. How dare I say that about her? Everybody loves her. That's a bad example. But you know what I mean? Like Tony Robbins, there you go. He could be polarizing. Some people are like, oh, I don't like the cussing. I don't like the, it's too much, right? And the raspy voice, too much. But to other people, it's like, I needed that. I needed I need someone to shake me. Yes. So that's why, because at the end of the day, it depends. It depends on you as a person, what triggers you, because everybody has different triggers depending on how you grew up. You uniquely grew up, so you have a unique trigger, and those triggers might be similar to other people, but it's your own. And things that fix or helps solve the trigger is spoken through different people and through different music and through different movies.
Yes, and I know that we want hard and fast rules in life, and as a person who has struggled with anxiety, I have also wished that there were just answers to things, but I have come to accept and also love that almost everything is gray, and there are some things that we know that could be considered hard and fast rules. And those are some of the things that we've already talked about, like when these things start causing you problems in the major areas of life. And then the rest of it is just enjoying whatever comes and whatever your story is, whatever your journey is, and riding with the unknowns.
Yeah. And know that I think it also has to do with maybe perfection. I know that people, I know myself personally, I'm just speaking quite personally then. I did certain things and I could have been seen as being addicted to work for a while. But my reason I was addicted is because it was an underlying problem with perfectionism.
Ooh.
I wanted
this is beautiful.
I want to be seen as perfect, because then I would get the validation of everybody. Then I would prove that I would be loved, that I would be worthy, and I have value in life. So if I wasn't,
there's always underlying stuff too.
Yeah. So if I wasn't useful to you, or if I wasn't perfect, or I wasn't someone I could look up to, someone could look up to, or helping people or benefiting somebody, then I wasn't useful, and they have no purpose in life, and there's no point in loving me. Why would you spend time with someone that's useless? And so I was addicted to working at the bakery, because every time I did something well at the bakery, that's my family
It
business, right?
was validation.
Every time I did well in it, not only do my parents validate me and say, wow, that was great, and blah, blah, whatnot, but my employees said, thank you so much for helping me. The customers would be like, oh, I love this. This cake is amazing. Or we celebrated my quinceañera 3 weeks ago, and the rolls were what everybody was talking about. People even forgot about the presents or something. Someone literally said that a week ago to me, and I couldn't stop smiling, and I was like, oh, and I just felt so amazing. I felt useful. I felt helpful. I felt worthy and valued. And I think that's why I felt like I really had an addiction to work, because I wanted to seek that gratification.
I mean, that is absolute beautiful insight there. And I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that there's underlying stuff like that for everybody. We do know that people who are on the severe end of addiction are born with lower levels of dopamine. So there is a chemical piece to it. We also know that there's genetic combinations, that if you carry these genetic combinations, you're much more likely to become an addict. So there's a genetic component, there's biochemical components, like we were saying earlier, like how something hits for you. One person might take an opioid and get super sick and say, I'm never taking that again. And other people take an opioid and they were like, oh, that euphoria was amazing. I want more of this in my life. Me, I took an opiate once and I fell asleep, so it did nothing for me. I was like, well,
Wait, what'd you take?
It was a hydrocodone. It was just a Vicodin, basically.
Okay.
So I've never taken an oxy or anything like that. I don't know what that could do for me. But it's all about how something hits for you. Just today I was talking to this guy about propofol, because when I had to have a stomach scope from back when I was hurting my stomach, I loved the propofol. It made me so happy. I woke up like clear and like so happy and focused, and just like I felt so good for no reason, just amazing. And what the thing was that when I went to get the procedure done, they told me most people take the day off and they just go home and sleep. But I didn't take the day off because I felt awesome. I was like, this is the best day ever. So how it hits you is individual based on your biochemistry and all these other things. So there's a lot of different components to it, but then almost always we all have stories, we all have traumas, we all have things we've been through. And so, yeah, there's stuff underlying even just the genetics and the biochemical stuff that needs to be paid attention to. Especially if you want to get better.
Right. That's why I think it's so important to go to therapy, to seek professional help if you feel like you're really out of control. Because that therapy, it just helps you peel all the layers of this onion, right? Because everybody's onion is different, right? Because let's say I have triggers in, I don't know, right, value, but you don't. Like you have anxiety, and like you have anxiety in this thing, but I have no anxiety really. I don't worry about things, or things don't really sleep. Like I sleep like a baby every night. And literally the world could be melting and I go, good night. And I'm just asleep. I'm fine. But I know that's so weird, right? Because literally I went through like hell and back when it comes to the breakup that I talked about before. But I slept every night, 8 hours, fine.
That's amazing.
I stayed up or think about it. Now I'm off on a tangent.
You're just saying like how our stories are different.
Oh, different. So the onions, right? So everyone's layers of the onions are different. So if you go to therapy, or you're at least speaking to somebody, you don't have to go to therapy and pay the money or whatnot, or you could go to cheaper like Zoom therapies, or at least have a friend, or join a church group, or join something that you could turn to someone that you respect, ideally that doesn't have the addiction.
Yes.
that you could share it with. You could share it, and then you could start peeling back those layers.
Yeah, and I think you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people out there who do have the insight and they're like, okay, now what? What do I do with it?
Yeah.
So, and that's, still something that another person can help you with. But interestingly, a lot of things operate the same way as addiction. So, we've already mentioned that you could sort of be addicted to working out. People can be addicted to eating. People can be addicted to not eating. People can be addicted to, and again, there's biochemical things that contribute. Like when you get under a certain weight, you can no longer think clearly. So you have to be able to be a healthy weight in order to get better. So,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So these things are complex, but they operate very similarly. And even OCD, there was a time when they were considering moving addiction under OCD because OCD operates very similarly to all these same things, including being in toxic relationships. And being in toxic relationships can be addicting. And because there's intense highs and there's intense lows, and we're always chasing the high in the relationship. So the same thing, occurs with binge eating disorders, shopping, gambling, porn, all the things that you can go overboard with. And even like, we were saying earlier, you can do a healthy activity too much and it can be a problem. Just like you can overdose on certain vitamins and things like that. So too much of anything is just not good for us.
Everything in moderation. But
Everything
moderation is subjective.
Yeah.
So much gray area.
I know. You know what's crazy? The national statistics on drinking, first of all, I think they're bullshit. I think somebody's lying. But so what they say is that like 25% of the population doesn't drink. And I'm like, bullshit. I don't know if I believe that. Either they're like too old to drink
or they're infants. Like how
good point.
But
yeah.
And also, who pulls these statistics? Because I've never answered any of those before.
Me neither. So, but then when they talk about, you said moderation subjective. So what is considered binge drinking for a woman is having more than 4 drinks.
Per setting, how many times a week?
In a day.
Every day.
Binge drinking is having 4 drinks in a day. So if you have a martini, that is considered 3 drinks. Martinis have 3. Look at her face. You guys can't see her face.
That makes no sense.
Yes, a martini is considered 3 drinks. Don't get me started on a Long Island iced tea or some of these like rum runners. Some of these drinks have multiple drinks in them, and so you think you only have 1 drink, but technically it's considered more. And like a wine, I think the pour on a wine is supposed to be like 4 ounces or something, but most places give you like, do you want 3, 6, or 9 ounces? So if you're having a 9-ounce glass of wine, then that's technically 2 drinks. So most people aren't even aware of like what is considered moderation. And women are recommended to not have more than 1 drink. And it's actually not even a whole drink. We're allowed to have like 3/4 of a drink a day.
No way.
And anything more than that is considered unhealthy. And if you have 4 drinks, you're binge drinking. So these are the rules. I didn't make them.
And this is speaking from a person like me. I only drink once a month. So do I just binge drink every month? And when I drink, I just literally I'll have like 2 martinis, but at most or something,
6
right? I don't
drinks.
do a lot.
That's 6 drinks, Julie.
6 drinks. This makes no sense whatsoever. No, I don't believe it. You have to I feel like we're pulling 1920s information. Like, update the data, people. Come on. How much do you drink?
I don't really drink anymore. I have found now that my stomach is a lot better, that I can still drink white wine. So I will have a white wine on occasion, but I really can't even drink more than 2 glasses or I start to feel like the same symptoms kind of again. So
Yeah, but how many ounces? How many
that's
ounces?
that is a great question, and I have no idea how many ounces I've been consuming. But yeah,
When
I
you
don't.
fill it to the brim, Alicia, there's a problem.
So that's okay. How big is the cup? That's the question.
Yeah.
I used to do assessments on juveniles, and I would say, "How much do you drink when you go out?" And they'd be like, "Oh, I have like 1 cup." And I was like, "1 cup of what? What are you talking about?" They were talking about solo cups most of the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, how much alcohol is in your solo cup?" And they were like, "I don't know. I fill it like halfway." I'm like, "Halfway? Do you know how many drinks that is?"
How many drinks is a half of solo cup? How much solo cups? What? How many ounces? 20 ounces?
I think they're either 12 or 16. I don't know, something
It
along
can't be
those lines.
12. I think 12 seems too small. I think it has to be probably 16.
Yeah, I think so too. So
So they're
half
doing 8
would be
ounces.
8 ounces. And I think a shot is 1 ounce, right?
Yeah, I'm holding a little bottle right now that says 16 ounces, but it seems smaller than a solo cup. I wonder if a solo cup is heavier than that.
I have no idea. I don't know. But yeah, so we according to the experts, what moderation is a lot lower than what we think it is. And those numbers, by the way, are based on what is good for our bodies. So alcohol is a poison. It's not good for our bodies. It really doesn't do much for us at all. And obviously, like heroin and cocaine are similar.
Yeah. Okay, I just looked it up. I looked it up because I was too curious. So you know in the solo cups they have those ridges?
Yeah.
So the very bottom ridge, that little tiny like millimeter at the very bottom is 1 fluid ounce. I pull
That's
way
one shot.
more when I'm doing a shot. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're supposed to, there's no way. I didn't even know that was even a measurement. Right? It's like the bottom of the cup. Anyways, okay. And then the second part, which is like maybe a 3/4 up or a quarter up the cup, that's 5 fluid ounces. So that's where you should stop with wine. And there's no way I ever stopped from that line either when it comes to regular drinks.
Right.
And then the full cup all the way to the top is 18 ounces.
It's 18 ounces? Oh, wow.
18 ounces.
Oh,
then there's a couple of
wow.
more, there's a couple more ridges right at the very top, and one of them's a 12 ounce and 16 ounce ridge. But very interesting. See, so if someone filled that up with a drink at a frat party, let's say because you're waiting in line for a long time and people are like, oh, then there's only like X amount of drinks at the party, I would just fill mine up because I wouldn't want to come back.
Yeah.
So 18 ounces when I was in college, I probably was like 100 pounds or something. 18 ounces of hard alcohol, but it wasn't just pure alcohol. Of course, I would have died. But just a spirit or something, right? A mixed drink.
Well, in those frat parties, a lot of times. So then the other thing you have to consider, and this is where things get real tricky with alcohol. And I don't mean to just focus on alcohol. We're just talking about that right now, but is how potent the liquor is. So when it comes to a frat party, for example, they usually use like the highest potency for the liquor. So that's already considered more than one drink, even if you're only having 1 ounce.
Yeah.
And the same for like craft beers and even like those Trulies and stuff now. The Trulies have more alcohol in them than a beer does. So people can say like, well, I only had 2 Trulies, but because of the higher alcohol content, you technically had more drinks than your counterpart who was just drinking Coors Light.
Yeah, so drinking I don't know, even I'm still getting over the whole 2 martinis is binge drinking. 2 martinis is binge drinking. Come on,
that's true.
It's just that is crazy to me because the whole time I'm like, oh no, I barely drink, and everybody always says, "Are you finally gonna drink? Are you finally gonna drink?" I rarely drink, and it's like, oh, I guess I binge drink.
Oops.
More often than I thought I did.
I remember this girl I used to work with, she was an alcoholic, and she was like, yeah, I'm finding that it's really hard to date because people will say on their profiles that they only drink socially, and what they really mean is that they binge drink and they're damn near alcoholics. I was like, oh yeah, that's social drinking now. At least
Yeah,
in
that's true.
Tampa it is.
You know what? That's true. There is the evidence that but when people were in their in the 60s or something, when they were in college and drinking, it really was 1 2 drinks and that's it, right? Versus now it's way more often for a student to say that they've been blacked out from drinking versus a person in their 60s, or I mean in the 1960s, at a dorm room saying they're blacked out. Like that was much more worrisome at that time versus now it's like, oh, okay.
The same is true for marijuana. So marijuana's potency in the 70s was like 5% THC. And now marijuana's potency, like off the bush, you can get marijuana that has 30% THC. And that's just like a plant that someone grew. So, and then we have the vapes that are like 86% THC or 98% THC. So marijuana has become a lot more potent than it used to be, and it therefore has potential to cause more problems than it used to.
Yeah. So those people that did like a ton of drugs at Woodstock or something, they probably weren't even that high. Or I mean they weren't, the drugs were clearly not as potent.
Right. Right. That is true. So we have really technology has been a blessing and a curse because we figured out how to make everything more potent. Even hell, we've even made fentanyl more potent. There are types of fentanyl being manufactured that are 100 times stronger than fentanyl, which is fucking insane if you ask me. Fentanyl's already out here killing everybody, and now we're making it more potent. But yes, we are, because more is better in an addict mind.
Mm. Yeah, because you get numb to it, right? In the beginning, you get, oh, you have a little bit. It's like, it's not. Or in the beginning, you go, oh, it's good, it's good, it's good, but it's not hitting you right. Let me get a little bit more. Let me get a little bit more. Let me get a little bit more.
Yeah, that's another one of those red flags. When you need more and more.
So when you see one of those red flags, what is the first step to recovery that you think you suggest you do? Find a friend, find a therapist, journal it out. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think you should trust yourself as far as journaling is concerned in that situation, because it's so easy to lie to yourself. But I would, first of all, I would say quit. I mean, I would say that abstinence, at least for a period of time, is really important, because when you've been under the influence for too long, you are no longer capable of thinking clearly. No matter how well you think you're doing, you could think better. So you need a period of abstinence before you even consider returning to use. And the research shows you should have at least 90 days sober before you try to return to moderate use. So the very first thing would be, getting sober. And if you don't think it's safe for you to do that on your own, then you should go to detox or treatment or, something along those lines. And then, yes, of course, therapy, psychiatry probably might be in order. There's usually a lot of mental illness involved in substance use. So, and any other kind of addiction. So, you want to treat the underlying issues.
Are there low cost rehab centers available? I'm sure there is, but can you just Google that and that just resources pop up?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I know like in Tampa, there are some lower cost treatment centers. I know that if you get arrested, usually court systems have places that they have contracts with and help support. And so they can send you to these court approved places, and usually it's cheaper. But cheaper isn't always better, unfortunately. And if you Google help yes, things will come up, but is it going to be a lot to sort through? Yes. So, that's where, I don't know. Sometimes if you call, I know here, I can't answer for the whole country, but I know that here, if you call the rehabs and you're interested in treatment, a lot of times they'll help you find a place to go that's going to best suit you, even if it's not their treatment center. Like they
Oh,
have
okay.
people who do that.
Yeah. I'm sure you could go to a treatment center and just say, hey, I only have this much. And they'll be like, well, this has a budget of this much, or this costs this much, but I could probably recommend you. So don't be afraid of going to one, even if it feels too expensive. Most of the time they would know where, maybe a phone number at least, to help you get to somewhere else.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing is, and I tell people this all the time, when it comes to medical bills, you can almost always A, negotiate them down, and B, get on a payment plan.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
true.
your medical bills never need to go to collections, because you could say, I have $10 a month that I can put on this bill. And even if you're paying $10 a month for the rest of your life, whatever, you're making payments and they can't report it to your credit because you're making payments.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's still like, even though I know this information, it's still anxiety provoking for me to owe a big medical bill. And I think it is
Yeah.
for a lot of other people too. But at the end of the day, you're investing in yourself. And I like to believe you're worth it, but I know a lot of people don't feel like they're worth it. But you just never know what can happen in your life if you become the best person you can be.
No, that is so cute.
It's true. You're capable of so much more than you think you are, especially when you're trying to be the best person you can be.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen so many people come so far in life to places that they never thought they could be. I was just talking to a client the other day who had a trauma trigger at work, which he has like oodles and oodles of trauma. And in the past, he would have had a full blown panic attack and he would have been a mess for several days, wouldn't have been able to sleep that night. But he was able to ward off the panic and didn't even have the panic attack. And then he slept that night. And yes, he did have a nightmare, but he was still able to sleep. So I've watched people get better and do better. And if you don't give up, you just don't know where you can end up.
No.
Yeah.
I love that. There's so many quotes I could pull from this episode alone.
You're the cutest, Julie. I still am going to crack up later about your Molly story. That was just hilarious.
Well, to be fair, I was at the tail end of the Molly when I was with my parents. I wasn't like high, like I wasn't like, dilated, like super dilated, huge eyeballs.
You're like, this dinner with you guys is the best.
But I did feel like that. I was like, oh, this is so nice. It's like,
So
I
cute.
feel so happy right now.
That is so stinking cute, man.
And just literally all day, every day, or all day that day, I just felt like I feel so happy. Oh, I feel so happy. Oh, I feel so
Aw.
lucky. Yeah, it was great. Simple things in life. At least.
Yes, for sure. Well, hopefully we said something useful for somebody.
Yeah. Tell us if you want us to go deeper into a specific drug, maybe that might help somebody. Or we could share. You know what I really want to do? I want to grab somebody that has gone through all that, and been a guest in our, or put him as a guest on our podcast, because it's really interesting how sometimes you don't even expect it. Like this person, there's a lot of people that I know that are from the outside look completely fine. And I just have never, would not have expected that at all. And then also it's like, what? What just happened? He's been doing it for how long? Like 2 years? 2 years? Where have I been? Like I've seen him in 2 years, and I've talked to him on the phone, and how did that happen? I feel like a lot of times it's like that versus, the way that we're describing people. Sometimes we're like, oh, come on, you shouldn't be doing that, or you're skipping work, or blah, 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 then the little signs. Sometimes the signs, they're so small, or maybe we're just all busy with life, right? That I don't notice them until it becomes like this huge, just brick. And this is a quote that reminds me of what I'm trying to say right now. But it's like, it's the whispers. You're not listening to the whispers. Like it's like a brick off the wall, and then you're not seeing the little chips coming down, coming down, and coming down. You ignore those, and you go, "Oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal," until the entire brick falls over, hits you over the head, right? And sometimes we're not listening to those whispers, and a lot of times, I know personally, for me, I'm a hard learner. Sometimes I need that brick.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Also, what you're describing there is not unusual when you're part of the 1/3 of the population that's just never going to be addicted to anything. You don't imagine that other people are. You aren't thinking like, oh shit, are you on drugs? You're not thinking that. When you're part of the severe group, you think everybody's doing drugs. You're looking at, what are you on? What are you taking? So it all depends on your experience basically in life. So
yeah, I did date a recovering alcoholic, meth addict, and his stories are very, very interesting. He said it got so bad that he was always high functional,
yeah. A lot of people are. That's why we can't go with those criteria about physical and all of that, because a lot of people are out here functioning.
Yeah, he said he had like 4 bags of heroin in his pocket, 3 in one pocket and one in another, because in case he got caught, he could just throw the one and be like, "Here, you got it," and then he leave and he still has his 3. So he said that one time he was, his I guess his sister was like crying, like, "Please, can you stop? Can you please stop?" or something, right? And she was grabbing him and like crying. And he said, "Fine, you want me to fucking stop? Here you go." And he threw the baggie and he left, and he felt bad, but he also felt relieved that she didn't take the other 3. Like
Yeah.
it's so crazy to feel like he said he was crying on the way home, like sobbing, crying, and going like, "I feel so useless. Why didn't I give her everything? Whatever." And then immediately went to, "But I need it. Why the fuck would she take all of it? Does she even care?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was this, pendulum of thinking. It literally was extreme pendulums, right?
Well, and that's the wild thing. Like, I loved working in rehab because I got to hear all those stories, but never see that side of a person. But also something that you and I talk about a lot is mindset and your thoughts, and trying to like work with your thoughts and your emotions. And if your thoughts can tell you, oh man, it's so bad that I'm driving away from my sister, knowing damn well that I'm going to use heroin again when I just tricked her into thinking that I'm not. And you can have that side of thoughts and feelings, but then that doesn't feel good. So immediately our brain is like, but wait a second, why would she want me to suffer? And it switches like that. And it's just about which side we choose to put our focus on and to put our attention on. And if he sat in the, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this to my sister, if he sat in that longer, maybe he wouldn't have used the other 3 bags of heroin. But instead, his mind helped him, I'm using air quotes, by saying, no, she's the problem here, because she doesn't care if you have to go through withdrawal, and she doesn't have to experience withdrawal, and she doesn't know what it's like, and she just doesn't get it. And that's what our brains do. And that's why we can't always trust the things that we think, because both sides could be accurate depending on which way you're looking at it.
That's really hard. That's a good point that you brought up. Trusting your own judgment.
Yeah. Well, not just your judgment, your thoughts and your feelings. you know, because we can convince ourselves of anything, which is something that we've talked about before. And so what do we want to convince ourselves of is the question.
Because you're going to anyway, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna convince ourselves we're happy. We're gonna convince ourselves, and I'm guilty of this, of sleeping in longer because work doesn't really need me today. I'm just gonna sleep another hour. I do that a lot. It's just really bad. But we convince ourselves we are our own best attorneys, right? Like you said.
Yes.
And so maybe we have to make a conscious effort of choosing to convince ourselves of positive things.
Exactly. That is exactly it. It's a mind game. Life is kind of a mind game. And it's not an easy one. I'm not saying it's just that simple, folks. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that is the truth. What kind of messages are we saying to ourselves? What's going to be most helpful? And where do we choose to put our focus? Those are the questions.
Good questions.
We'll leave you guys with a little nugget to think about.
Some homework.
Yes, you're welcome.
But thanks for joining us this week, guys.
See you soon.